Welcome back to the show. I'm Faraz Siddiqui. We're going to go over the top 20 waiver wire pickups for week 9. I want to hit on some news real quick and talk about last night's game as well. Let's start with that. Absolutely brutal performance by the Raiders. Okay, the frustration is just mounting, right? Devontae Adams pissed, one catch for 11 yards, slamming his helmet on the sidelines, right? Jacoby Myers, one catch for 19 yards. Josh Jacobs, he was asked how does his offense get fixed. He said that that isn't his job to figure out. Shots fired to Josh McDaniels. These guys had no catches at halftime. Michael Mayer had no catches at halftime. He still had that full-time role that we were hoping for, yet no catches at halftime. Okay, only one catch for 19 yards as well for the game for him. Josh McDaniels is seriously on the hot seat, man. It looks like he has lost his players, especially on offense. These guys might have cost you a win last night. Blame it on Josh McDaniels. But just leave it to these dysfunctional teams to do that. It just really sucks. There's not much you can do at this point. You got to hope it gets better. Otherwise, you'd just be selling these guys super low. Jacoby, was a high-end wide receiver too all year. They can bounce back, but there's going to be have to be some changes here going into next week. On the other side, the guys you need to come through came through. Amon-Ra went for 100 yards again. Sam Laporta did his thing, 8 for 57 and a touchdown. And Jahmyr Gibbs. Are you still wondering why we were so high on Jahmyr Gibbs coming into the year? And if you were wondering about that, are you still wondering now? 26 carries for 152 yards and a touchdown. 5 catches for 37 yards. On top of that, 32 touches in this game. The Lions have the bye now. David Montgomery might be back after that. But after these two performances by Gibbs, I don't know how this coaching staff just rides Montgomery the way that they were before he got hurt. Gibbs, he has to have earned a role at this point. He's led all running backs in rushing over the last 2 weeks. He leads all qualifying running backs in yards per carry over the last 2 weeks. He leads all running backs in percentage of runs to go over 15 yards. And now they have the bye to figure out how they want to do that, right? There's a reason why we were all so high on Gibbs coming into the season. This is why. Guys like Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey didn't need to be the primary rushers, and they didn't have to have the goal line role during their rookie seasons to be a fantasy RB1 in PPR formats. In fact, they only averaged 7 carries a game. But they did average 5 catches per game, and that's really all they needed. That's the type of role we need for Gibbs after the bye. This is the optimistic view, of course, but there's definitely a world, where we go back to see Montgomery carrying the load. That's definitely possible. What percentage would I give it? I don't know, a 60-40 chance that Montgomery ends up taking that full role back, right? We'll see. All right, some news real quick. It's looking like Clayton Tune will be getting the start for the Cardinals this week. Apparently, Jonathan Gannon looked at the film this week, right after the game, and said that first he said that he was going to start, right? And then the next day he's like, actually, never mind. So this seems kind of weird, kind of fishy to me. It could be a combination of the fact that one of these guys can't be traded today on Tuesday is the trading deadline. Particularly Dobbs. I'm also talking about Kyler Murray, too. There's a possibility he gets dealt. You never know. Arizona just reclaimed the number 1 spot in the 2024 NFL Draft with their loss on Sunday, so they might want to try and hold on to that spot. That could be what they're doing here. They also have the Browns this week. Kind of messed up to just throw Clayton Tune out there, in Cleveland against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Now, there is a chance that Kyler Murray plays this week. I think that door is still open, according to Tom Pelissero. But we'll see. Sean McVay said that Matthew Stafford is day-to-day with a UCL sprain in his thumb. Who knows if he's actually day-to-day or not. We've seen day-to-day tags being placed on Rams players who ended up on IR. Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams, so who knows. For now, I'm holding Cooper Kupp. I'm holding Puka Nacua. I don't want to trade them for peanuts right now in case Stafford ends up being okay in a week or two. I think best case scenario is that he misses this week through the bye and then is back week 11 good to go and able to grip the ball. That might be wishful thinking, So I get it if you want to just move on from these guys, but I feel like if you do trade them right now, you'll kind of be trading them for peanuts. And because of the fact that, Matthew Stafford is banged up right now, that's my concern. So if you can trade them, these guys, and you can get really, really good compensation back, and you think you can, then go for it. Because then you'll mitigate your risk by doing that. Kenny Pickett is practicing on a limited basis, but there's a chance he can't go on Thursday night against the Titans. Either way, you probably want to have Deontay Johnson and George Pickens in your lineup in a good matchup against the Titans, even if Mitch Trubisky starts. Another week of no Justin Fields is going to be the Tyson Bagent show against the Saints once again. DJ Moore is going to be a wide receiver 3 for me this week. Leonard Fournette has signed with the Bills. This has massive implications for James Cook rest of season. According to Fantasy Life Utilization, Cook went from 52% of the rushing attempts to 65% of the rushing attempts to 74% of the rushing attempts over the last 3 weeks. Okay, so that was improving. So things were on the up for James Cook, but now Fournette coming in. The goal line roll thing is obvious. Like when they get down there, it's eventually going to be Fournette with that roll. James Cook has seen 17% of the Bills' carries inside the 5-yard line this year, and Latavius Murray has seen 50% of them. All that is likely going Fournette's way at this point. We've seen Fournette trusted on passing downs as well, and I think putting Latavius Murray into run routes over James Cook made 0 sense. Putting Fournette to run routes over James Cook is going to make 0 sense, but I bet you it happens. 1.37 yards per route run for James Cook this year. Pretty good considering he only has an 8% target share for the season. You have Latavius Murray getting games of 45% and 41% and 37% route participation. Like, what is happening here? This makes 0 sense to me. And now Fournette coming in, if Murray can get that work, Fournette can get it too. Okay, so pick up Fournette. I'm not even sure James Cook can be a better fantasy option the rest of the way this year than Devin Singletary was for the Bills last year. At least Devin Singletary was getting 70% of snaps. And I don't think that's going to be happening for James Cook this year. All right, before we move to the waiver wire, guys, please hit follow on the podcast on your podcast app. A lot of people listen to the show, but don't hit that follow button. It helps us out a ton. You'll also get the podcast in your feed as well, so that would help you as well. But if you can throw in a 5-star review, that would mean the world too. All right, waiver wire time. Let's go. At number 1, I have Trey McBride. Now, Josh Dobbs not starting this week throws a bit of a wrench into this. I'm not worried about Kyler because once he takes over, assuming he doesn't get traded, he's going to target the best receivers, and McBride is one of their best receivers right now. McBride's only behind Travis Kelce in yards per route run this year among all tight ends with 20 or more targets. The guys after him, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, and TJ Hawkinson. He's also Pro Football Focus's 4th highest rated receiving tight end this year behind Kelce, Kittle, and Andrews. So we're always looking for those tight ends who can provide some sort of positional advantage, and when we can identify them, we have to take those shots. And by the way, if you listen to this show, if you've been paying attention on Instagram, you would already have McBride on your roster. I have Darrell Henderson at 2. You have another fill-in this week, in a good matchup against Green Bay. He's in a timeshare with Royce Freeman, who's actually been more efficient than Darrell Henderson on the ground 2 weeks in a row. But it's been Henderson who's been getting more work. And even though Freeman got the touchdown last week, I think most weeks Henderson will get the first crack at that. He ended up taking the ball to the 2-yard line when Freeman came in and got the touchdown. I do have Freeman at 5 on this list. So if Henderson is already rostered and you need someone to fill in a good matchup, I think he's a solid flex play this week. I think he's a good pickup. At 3, I have Leonard Fournette. We talked about him already. He's not someone I'm willing to throw in my lineup this week. I think it's going to be a little bit of a waiting game with him to see how his role shakes out. Again, you're picking him up because he has a chance to be the goal line back on a good offense. There's a chance he gets 10-plus touches on top of that, and he has a chance of running some routes as well. So I covered that a little bit earlier in the show when we talked about that, so just rewind this a little bit if you want more details and you missed it. At 4, I have Tank Dell. I'm not overly discouraged about Dell's performance this past week. I do know that he had a couple of games with a high target share earlier this year before he got concussed. This entire offense, came out of their bye pretty sluggish. I think he still should be rostered. Nico Collins was still the most targeted Texans wide receiver, and that was expected, but Tank did run the most routes of any of these wide receivers, and once this offense finds its footing again, which it will, right, we could see some productivity here from Tank Dell. They do have an exploitable matchup this week against Tampa Bay, so I'm fine throwing Tank Dell in my lineup as a flex this week. I have Royce Freeman at 5. We talked about him already. I had Taysom Hill actually at number 6. Taysom Hill is getting this non-traditional role, right, as a tight end. Now, Juwan Johnson was back last week. He didn't have a full route participation, but it didn't matter because Taysom Hill's production came in the run game. He was supplementing Alvin Kamara despite these other running backs being healthy. Now, this is something that probably won't continue the rest of the year. We've seen Taysom Hill come in, and we've seen him just completely disappear from the offense. And we've seen these, few weeks of like ridiculous production because you can throw him in your tight end spot, which is awesome, but it disappears a whole lot. So that's my concern with Taysom Hill. I definitely want to pick him up just in case it does continue. And I'm fine throwing him in my lineup this week until it ends up not happening anymore at the tight end position. But I am concerned that this is just something that doesn't last as long, especially as Juwan Johnson starts getting healthy again. Emari Demercado, I have him at 7. He was the guy once again for the Cardinals last week, but it is worth noting that the snaps came down to 55%, and Keontae Ingram took a lot of the passing down work away from him. He ran 10 more routes than Demercado in this game. Not something I was expecting. I thought Demercado would have that role fully. Now, this week, the Browns, they're going up against the Browns. They're not this amazing rushing defense, right? But they're a good defense overall. They're a very good defense overall. So if Clayton Tune is getting the start, I'm just a little bit worried about this entire offense. Still, if you need a desperate running back play, I think Demercado is a solid pickup if available because, you saw the volume that he got, 20 carries this past week. That is something. I have Zach Charbonnet at number 8. He had more snaps than Kenneth Walker this past Sunday. He had 7 total opportunities to Walker's 10. Can this be the, Charbonnet moving in on Walker a little bit in terms of, this becoming a little bit of a timeshare? Maybe, but I think it's more about Walker missing a couple practices this week with the calf injury, limiting his workload. It's worth noting that Charbonnet did look good, okay? But we did see something like this earlier in the year in week 3 when Walker's rushing attempts went from 77% to 55%, right? But it just sprung back up to 71%, 76%, and 79% the 3 weeks after that. And also, Walker's he's playing really good this year. His missed tackles forced, his yards after contact, he's playing really well. Okay, so I think they're going to continue to use him as their workhorse. Sam Howell's at 9. I talked about him on the last episode. So, I hope you started him as one of our starts of the week, right? Straight up. He's had 3 top 7 finishes, I should say, actually, in 3 of his last 4 weeks. He was the overall QB1 in week 8. And he can be started moving forward as a QB1. Not the best matchup going into New England this week, so not this amazing start, but he's definitely a fringe QB1 option regardless at this point. Demario Douglas is at 10 this week. Kendrick Bourne will be out for the year with a torn ACL. There is a solid chance that Douglas leads the Patriots in targets the rest of the way. In week 7, he jumped to a 76% route participation, and then that jumped again to 84% this past Sunday, which was the most of any Patriots wide receivers or tight ends. He led the team in targets as well. On a per route basis this year, he's leading the team in target rate. And he looks good. There was a lot of hype around him in Patriots camp this offseason, and now he's getting close to this full-time role as a sixth-round rookie. Okay, so there could be something here. I like him personally. He passes the eye test for me as well. I talked about it, a couple days, in the last episode. So I think we roster him and see what happens over the next couple of weeks. It's also worth noting that they're going up against Washington this week, right? I think he's an upside flex play. I really do. All right, let's see. Who do I have next? I have Logan Thomas next. I think if you need a streaming tight end, he had a solid week this past week. Sam Howell's doing his thing. I think you can throw in Logan Thomas in your tight end spot if you need one. Michael Wilson, I have him at 12. This isn't for me to want to start him this week against Cleveland, given the quarterback situation especially, but this is more about, when Kyler Murray comes back. Does Michael Wilson end up seeing a higher target share? Does he end up, with more production? Because he has a better quarterback behind center here. Will Levis is at 13. Obviously, he had the huge debut, 4 touchdowns thrown. He definitely should be picked up. He plays the Steelers on Thursday night. So if he ends up doing his thing on a short week against the Steelers, there's a very good chance that he ends up unseating Ryan Tannehill. He ends up being the guy for them the rest of the way. And then you have somebody who could be fantasy relevant. Okay, talk about him being a big body. I talk about him being potentially relevant near the goal line. Something to consider. Rashid Shaheed, man, he kind of pops in and out of these waiver wire rankings. It's one of those things where, if you need a spot start if you need a wide receiver, if you need a flex desperately, why not take a shot on his upside? Because he's had these big upside games this year, right? And most of the time, like, he's giving you a super low floor, but like the upside is the upside, it's there, right? So throw him in your lineup when you need it. He's like one of the most like elite separators downfield, where he gets just wide open. Like when the ball's in the air going to him, he has like 6-7 yards of separation at times. So I think he should be rostered because he's just one of those guys that you can throw in a pinch whenever you need him. Quentin Johnston, he's a little bit of a long-term ad for me, like a little bit more promising this past Sunday, right? It's kind of what you wanted to see. Now, Josh Palmer was definitely a little bit banged up for sure, but they manufactured some touches for Quentin Johnston. They're starting to use that yak ability that he was known for coming in. So this is a good sign for him. He seemed a little like he was like stumbling and bumbling all over the place. Whatever. They started using him. There is some promise here. Like, you guys know that I'm not the biggest QJ guy. Coming in, I had Josh Downs ranked above him coming into the NFL. But, QJ is somebody with that first round draft capital. Regardless, you still want to, and listen, his profile, it wasn't terrible. It's pretty good, okay? But he's somebody that you probably want to continue to bet on and not get too impatient with, because again, we're so used to these rookie wide receivers just coming out the gate and doing their thing. Stay a little patient if you can. But with that being said, he's not a must-hold on your bench by any means. Okay, I'm just saying that don't give up on him and assume that he's just done. He's not going to do anything from here on out. Just to wrap this up a little bit, Tyjae Spears, it doesn't look like Derrick Henry's going to get traded, but I put him on here just in case he does. But not only that, he can be potentially a spot started in PPR leagues, especially if the Titans end up being down in games. That Tyjae Spears will be the guy on the field. Devin Singletary, a 50-50 split with Dameon Pierce this past week. The offense wasn't good. I already mentioned that, they kind of came out of the bye sluggish. In better games, when this offense is rolling a little bit, it is possible that Singletary is a lot more fantasy friendly. Khalil Shakir at 18, the Bills were down some tight ends in this game, right? Multiple tight ends, right? Quentin Morris, also Dawson Knox. So they went a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, a lot of 11 personnel. Khalil Shakir ended up coming in and doing his thing, caught all of 6 of his passes for 90-plus yards. You guys know from last offseason that Khalil Shakir was one of my favorite, like later round guys that I liked coming into the NFL. I was rooting for him. This is something that I was hoping for. Does it stick? Who knows, right? That's my only issue here. Jonathan Mingo is at number 19. He's starting to come on a little bit, right? Like he has a little bit of production, right? So if Bryce Young ends up taking this step forward, maybe, in the second half of the year, it's not just Adam Thielen. Like, it could be Adam Thielen and Jonathan Mingo. Mingo did run the most routes of any Panthers wide receiver this past Sunday. So we always see it, right? These high draft capital, second round pick, right, could break out later on in the year. So don't forget about Jonathan Mingo. Marvin Mims at number 20 here. Does Jerry Jeudy get moved? Does Courtland Sutton get moved? It's possible, right? So if that's the case, you want Marvin Mims because that will clear, that path for Marvin Mims to see near a full-time role, hopefully, because we've seen him, especially early on in the year, super, super efficient, right, on his targets. Serious deep threat as well, right? So that's the top 20 guys. I have a bunch more. Like, I have, how many guys? 35 waiver wire pickups for this week. You can go on our website, upperhandfantasy.com. You can go check that out there. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter. Zach put up a cool Halloween-themed newsletter today. It's completely free. It goes to your email inbox every single morning. So go check that out. Go to upperhandfantasy.com. Check out the waiver wire rankings. You can also scroll all the way down the homepage and sign up for the newsletter as well. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. We appreciate you. Thanks a lot. We'll talk soon. See ya.